And there we are again for another round three actually, on the happiness series with Carrie Brightwell from Bright Wellbeing, all the way over from Thailand. How's the weather over there?
Super hot. It's really hot.
Okay,
Yeah.
so in any case, we're actually cooling down. So let's get straight into it. Happiness number 3, based on the book of Shaun Achor. Love to see what
Yeah. Let me share my screen with you. Okay, wonderful. So let's have a quick recap. So we are talking about The Happiness Advantage, which is a book written by Shaun Achor, where he describes a lot of scientific research that shows you that happiness is actually the precursor to success. And what this means is when we are happy, we actually give ourselves and our work the competitive advantage. So he describes various principles that you can apply in your life to increase your overall happiness and therefore maximize your potential. Because when we're experiencing these positive emotions, we flood our brains with dopamine and serotonin, and then we improve our brain and our body function. So we have better cognitive functions, we're more engaged, we're more motivated, energized, innovative, resilient, etc., etc. All those things that we want. So we've already looked at principle number 1, where we described 7 things that you can do to actually increase your day-to-day happiness, as well as priming ourselves to being happy. And we also looked at principle number 2, the fulcrum and the lever, where we looked at how changing your mindset actually increases the amount of possibility and power in your life. So today we are looking at principle number 3. First of all, I'm going to describe a scenario to you, Douwe, and everyone else who's watching back. Now, what I want you to do is you're going to listen to this scenario, and then I'm going to ask a question at the end. And I want you to just observe and remember your immediate response to this question, right? So no logic coming into it, your immediate response. So the scenario is, you're in the town, you're walking down the high street, and you need to go and get some money from the bank. So you walk into the bank and you put yourself in the queue, it's a nice queue, and you're just happily waiting. And then you notice some commotion going on. And all of a sudden, oh dear, there's an armed robber in the bank. And there's a little bit of scuffling and shuffling. And after this commotion, you actually get shot in the arm. Are you lucky or are you unlucky? So remember your immediate response to that scenario. And then I will now introduce you to principle number 3, and all will become obvious soon as to why I described that to you. Yeah, changing my slide.
I'm not answering this question right this minute.
You're not answering, no, just keep it to yourself. Okay, so principle number 3, we're talking about the Tetris Effect. Now, what is this? My interpretation of this principle means that we need to practice looking for the positives. So, Douwe, do you remember the Tetris Effect, the computer game?
No, I don't remember. I remember a similar game, but not. I don't think this particular one. No.
Okay, so let me describe this to you. I think it came out in the 1990s, if I remember from when I used to play this on a little handheld console. The idea of this game is that as these shapes will fall from the top of the screen, you then manipulate the shapes. You move them left, you move them right, you can turn them 90 degrees. And the idea is that you are scanning for a gap, for a space that this falling shape can actually fall into, so that you can get a complete horizontal line. And then when you achieve that horizontal line, it wipes away, and then the rest of the colored squares fall down to the bottom. It's you against the computer. You need to get as many horizontal lines as you can before all those colored squares build on top of each other and touch the top, because as soon as they touch the top, you are out. So why on earth are we talking about the Tetris Effect? There was a scientific study done where they got people to play this game a lot, continuously, for a certain amount of days or weeks on end. And it was found that, first of all, this game is highly addictive. Those people that were playing the game, when they stopped playing and they went out into normal life, they were still scanning for opportunities. They were scanning for shapes, they were scanning for gaps, they were trying to manipulate objects to fall into place, and they were seeing the shapes in their mind's eye all the time. So yes, it proves that the game is addictive, but what it also demonstrates is that you can become stuck in a pattern of thought or behavior. And this isn't good if the way that you perceive the world is actually negative, because you then get stuck in that negative pattern of thought. So as it says here, people trapped in the Tetris Effect are essentially prisoners of their own brain, as it is our brain that dictates how we perceive the world around us. But of course, if you're naturally a positive person, then you get stuck in the positive perception, and that's what we're looking for. But for the majority of us, we're actually, you use this, we're actually trained to scan for the negative. So for the majority of us, we will actually have a negative perception of the world. So how are we trained to scan for the negatives? There's a lot of negative incoming information coming at us from the news, from the social media, etc. But also many of us will actually have jobs where we have to scan for the negatives, where we are looking for anomalies, issues, stresses, injustices, and things that need sorting out. So we're constantly scanning for all these negatives. And when you constantly scan and focus on the negatives, if you have an inability to decompartmentalize that and keep it at work, then what you do is you start to bring that scanning for the negatives into your life outside of work, so into your families, into your friendships, into all of your social interactions.
Yeah,
so this,
I totally get that, and I think in terms of be bold, for example, people that are in a critical environment, right?
Yeah.
Idea of not being good enough or something will actually be very good at finding negative things,
Yes, very quickly as well.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. So the scenario that I described to you, what was your answer? Were you lucky or were you unlucky at being shot in the arm?
Unlucky.
You were unlucky. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, studies that have been conducted on this, 70% of the population who answered will say that they were unlucky for being shot in the arm. Now that's a negative perception, because only 30% will use the positive perception, is that they were lucky because they only got shot in the arm and they weren't shot somewhere vital, right? So it demonstrates here that we have the ability to distort our reality based on our perception. So we have the ability to actually just make life worse for ourselves, depending on whether we're looking for the negatives or we're looking for the positives. And as I said, if you have an inability to decompartmentalize this scanning, those people that bring the scanning for the negatives home, they actually suffer from more stress, more depression, from more poor physical health, and they actually can lead to substance abuse as well. So we need to find, go on.
I thought there's a lot of people in the bank. I'm standing somewhere in the end of the line. I'm looking to see what's going on. I'm not even getting involved, and I get shot in the arm. That's unlucky, surely.
Okay. Okay. I don't know what to say about that.
Sure. Like out of all these people, I had a lot of people in there. And I get shot.
Yeah.
But anyways,
but some people might say that you're unlucky for walking in the bank at that time anyway,
Yeah, exactly. So the likelihood of being unlucky is going to be high.
Right, where were we? Okay, yeah, so we were talking about the inability to decompartmentalize, and you're obviously going to suffer from more stress, depression, etc. And we can also then develop what is called inattentional blindness. So the more you focus on the negatives, you get into this habit or this blindness, where it doesn't matter how much positivity is actually put in front of you, you don't see it. You're completely blind to the positives that are even there.
I think, when I just see that, I think when we do our meetings with Love Your Business, we always start off with claiming 3 wins for the past week.
Yeah.
It's all about acknowledging good stuff, right? And bring mind into a different space, it's in terms of mindset, but it's also teaching people to start looking for positive stuff. And it can be quite hard to see positive stuff if you're surrounded by what you perceive to be negative things, right?
Yeah.
Life is not safe, and therefore we always try to eliminate negative stuff.
But you can see here on this slide that if you're constantly focusing on the negatives, then this undercuts your creativity, raises your stress, lowers your motivation, and lowers your ability to accomplish goals.
Yeah, totally get that, and that's very disabling. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're in a job where you're constantly having to look for the negatives, I mean, you're setting yourself up for failure, you know? So how do we convert this? How do we turn this all around? Well, let me show you. Where's my cursor gone? There we go.
Drum roll.
So why do we want to learn to scan for the positives? So the impact of looking for the positives and seeing the positives is that we actually profit from three things: increased happiness, increased gratitude, and increased optimism. So the more positives you see, the more you pick up on, then the more better you're going to feel. You're going to increase the amount of positive emotions, which is what happiness is, because we're going to flood ourselves with more dopamine and serotonin. So with gratitude, the more opportunities that we see, the more grateful we become. And it's been scientifically proven that those people who practice gratitude, those who are more grateful, will end up being even more energetic, emotionally intelligent, forgiving, and less depressed, anxious, and lonely. So gratitude has been said, or is one of the most important things to experience or to practice in order for increased well-being. And then the final one that we will benefit from is increased optimism, because the more positives you scan for, the more you're going to see, therefore the more you're going to experience, and therefore the more you will expect. And so the more positives you expect, the more you see, the more you experience, and then you're going to expect even more. So it's just an upward spiral from there. So this is the impact of scanning for the positives, but how on earth do we actually start to turn this around, as we said, and start to practice looking for the positives? So it's recommended that there are two things that you need to do in order to scan for the positives. The first one, which might not come as a surprise, given what I've just said about those people who are grateful, is that you need to start to increase your use of gratitude techniques. So can you name me any gratitude techniques, Douwe?
The first one would be gratitude journals, right? The thought just occurs with me. I'm going from a male perspective a little bit, you know. Oh my God, this is for girls, right? This gratefulness type thing is not, I don't know, you know, it seems a bit soft, right? So relating to that, you know, telling a good story, maybe that would be a gratitude technique. You know, telling a joke and then lifting it up that way, and then acknowledging something good that has happened. Okay. Yeah, so that's a technique, isn't it, that you can learn?
Yeah. Being able to say thank you, giving some recognition to someone is a way of demonstrating gratitude.
Yeah, and also to acknowledge it to yourself that good thing just happened, not just for the other person.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, that will be one.
Yeah.
But it's already 4 or 5.
And I used to play this game, not a game, but I used to do this thing when we would sit at the dinner table. I would ask everyone to state 3 things that they're grateful for. And what I found really, really made a difference is not only do you state what you're grateful for, but you state why you are grateful for that, so that you actually connect to the emotion, to the feeling of that gratitude as well. So rather than just saying, I'm grateful that the sun is shining today, change that to, I'm grateful that the sun is shining today because it allows me to feel nature on my skin. It allows me to change the chemicals in my brain. It allows me to, or it gives me. So you state why you're grateful, connecting to the emotion. I find that really helps. So as you start to look for the positives, then studies have shown that, as I said, gratitude will increase your happiness levels, and it will even maintain that level of happiness even after you've stopped identifying what it is that you're grateful for. So gratitude has a long-lasting impact on your happiness levels. And then the second one is to stop and look for the positives. Now, this really reminds me of Be Bold, actually. So when you notice, when you become aware that you are either talking about the negatives, or you're looking for the negatives, or you are being in the negative, then just stop. Make the choice to stop and actually look for something positive. Even if the negatives are still glaringly obvious to you, find something that's positive there. And then naturally, the more you do this, the less the negatives will become the first thing that you notice, and the more you will start to notice the positives sooner. And then eventually, hopefully, you'll have flipped it completely and you're just looking for the positives. So we talk about the awareness, choice, and action in Be-Bold a lot, don't we?
Yeah, it's awareness. Once you're aware, you have a choice, and then you can actually make a deliberate choice of what you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's not always easy, of course, because the negative stuff might be pulling, right, or demanding more attention potentially, and we sort of like to make that true. So our personality might also align with it and actually want to go there and make that more true. Okay, so then we get caught up in the drama of the whole thing generally. So this whole idea about looking for positive stuff. Well, positive stuff is great once the negative things are fixed, right? So the natural inclination would always be to look at the negative stuff first. So to actually say stop, even stopping might be hard, and then stop and look for the positives. That's two. Now there's two things in one sentence, right? So being able to then look for the positives, you first have to stand still, and then go give yourself some time to look properly. And that basically what you're doing there, I think, or what you're talking about, Carrie, is a reset in motion.
Yeah, definitely. Noticing when you're being triggered, when you're coming from the red, when you're coming from a negative perception or perspective, and knowing that you have a choice to actually come from a different perspective, and then going through the steps that are necessary in order to get you to the green, or to get you from coming from the positive perception. That is a reset in motion. Yeah.
It is. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Really cool.
And when you start to scan for the positives, when you start to increase your amount of gratitude, when you make a conscious effort to look away from the negatives and look to the positives, this is just going to have a knock-on effect, in my opinion. So you see the positive, and because you're seeing the positive, you're going to see more positives. And because you're seeing more positives, you're going to be more grateful, which means you're going to give more recognition. You're going to give more encouragement to people, which means that you're going to be having more positive interaction. So we're going to increase the Lasado effect, which then means that everyone around you, your friends, your family, your team members, they're going to be performing better, which means you're going to get more success at work, which means that your job is then going to turn into a calling, because we talked about that last time. And when your job turns into a calling, you're aligned to your values. And when you're aligned to your values, you're naturally positive. So it's just going up and up and up and up and up. So make a conscious effort to look for the positives. So this is pretty,
but there is a lot to this positivity bit. It is not just mindset, right? It's not something you can just say, just do it, right? It is to take your mind to and saying, I'm going to practice this. I'm going to apply some of these things. I'm actually and lean in and actually picking up on some technique, or concentrate on one little thing you can do towards this.
Exactly. It's a constant practice. And what is really reassuring is, you're right, you don't have to do it all at once. You pick the ones that call to you the most, or the ones that you feel that you are able to apply now, because they're easy or because they're achievable in your mind or whatever. And then as every day passes, and we talked about this before, your happiness is going to go up and down, up and down, up and down, of course, through every day, through every week, through every month. But over time, where we go for these peaks and troughs, when you're practicing these principles, you're naturally going to increase both the levels of the peaks and the troughs. So even your lows will eventually be at the point at which your highs once were.
Yeah, well, that sounds...
So we can increase happiness over time.
Yeah, good point.
Of course. But everything is a practice. Exactly.
I think, it's apply it and choose, choose to do these things, and then you'll see the difference, Scanning for the positive. Yeah, it's not something that comes naturally. You're saying maybe some people are naturally wired like that. Maybe, or maybe they didn't have the lives that other people have had, right?
Yeah.
So it's still something people can learn. And whether or not they're naturally inclined or not. Okay, some people have a cheerful disposition and they will do that naturally, and then yes, of course, things go their way a lot. Sometimes it's not, but it can be applied by choice. Yeah, so that's really cool.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of nature nurture here. It is about, how were you brought up, or what environment is your work in? What is your job that you're doing? And then how can you shift that? And I just wanted to bring this back to the Tetris effect. So when you start to scan.
I've got a comment about that, because in relation today, where clients, a number of people with a client, where the wife said, "Hey, listen, it's always my job to keep, to watch out for stuff around here." And I think that is quite pertinent to this discussion, is where one person feels it's their job to be on watch all the time, right? They're feeling like support in that direction, but the other people are gonna just behave nice and positive, and everything is gone sweet, right? So now we can also see that is not very helpful in terms of that stress is all on that one particular person, or that job is on the one person only, right? So
yeah. Unless they have the ability to completely decompartmentalize and leave it all at work.
Yeah.
But as the Tetris effect shows, as the research shows, we don't have the ability to do that, because when we're doing something so much, we actually then get stuck in that thought pattern, which is why I brought us back onto this slide, to bring it back to the science again, to bring it back to the whole point of the principle. The Tetris effect is you get addicted, you get stuck in the negative thought patterns, in the negative perception, and we have to make an effort to pull ourselves out.
That's exactly what happened, because they took all that stuff home. And they can't compartmentalize because it wasn't settled. It wasn't adopted by the other people in the businesses about something that needed addressing, so that the alarm just stayed on. And it was very hard to then start looking for positive stuff.
Yeah. One of the stories that's told in the book actually is about a lawyer who was going through, or wanted a divorce from his wife, and he made a list. I think they were going through marriage counselling or something, and he made a list of all the things that she did wrong, which justified him wanting to split with her. And the counsellor was like, maybe you might want to write a list of all the things that she does right. This might be helpful, because he come from the negative. He initially wrote a list of all the things she does wrong. Whereas if you're trying to fix a marriage or a relationship, you need to maybe look the other way. Rather than telling them what they do wrong, tell them what they do right. And then maybe that will enhance some more positive interactions. Yeah.
I know how that goes. And it's the acknowledgement. We discussed it today, actually, around the acknowledging other people. Okay.
The Luzardo effect.
Acknowledging yourself, and then the other thing would be acknowledging other people. For their thing, and that which will have a massive effect on the outcome. Yeah. Hey, this is another cracker there, Carrie. Can't wait for the next one. What is that going to be? What's number 4?
You have to wait till episode number 4, and then I'll tell you all about it then. I'm not spoiling the surprise.
Thanks very much.
You're very welcome.
Again soon.
All right, take